Alright, so this game could actually be one of the worst racing games ever made. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, and then I play them, review them, and rank them. So last week we went all the way back to the SNES and played Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers, which was a very shamelessly painful Mario Kart clone that had no life or fun whatsoever. And this week the wheel has cursed us with Taxi 2. Now you may recognise the Taxi name because we have already covered Taxi 3 and I absolutely f***ing hated it. But by some miracle, this is actually worse. Alright, now listen, I know that's a very bold claim to make saying that Taxi 2 could be one of the worst racing games ever made, but I'm going to double down on it. Triple down, even. This is probably one of the worst video games ever made, let alone worst racing games. This game is just painful. I have never raged so hard at a game in my life, and you can take my word for it because I have 500 hours on Escape from Tarkov. And no, that is not a flex, that is a cry for help. Okay, so Taxi 2 originally released on Windows in the year 2000, and it was developed by Bluesphere. It then made its way to the Dreamcast in 2001, also developed by Bluesphere, and then to the PlayStation in 2002, developed by DC Studios. Now you may know the name DC Studios from handling some DS ports such as Thrillville Off the Rails, and the PlayStation version is the version of the game that we are looking at today. Though Taxi 2 is of course based on the film of the same name, which was a big hit over in France, and I believe other parts of Europe as well. The film released in March 2000 and was a moderate box office success, making $64 million off of a $10 million budget. But from what I've been reading, there was some crazy stuff happening on set. During one of the Peugeot stunts, they accidentally killed one of the cameramen. From adjusting the height of a jump, the car flew too far and literally crashed into a cameraman and other crew members. Crazy, insane, horrible stuff. So anyway, I've never seen the film, so going into this game I had no idea what to expect other than the fact that Taxi 3 was both rubbish and ridiculous. But oh man, I was not ready for what I was getting into for this one. Okay, so these mission titles seem pretty harmless. We've got here, well, the warm-up and the pregnant woman? What the fuck is going on? Oh, and the Japanese, which by the way, is one of the worst missions I've ever played in my life. And the climax of the game, so we've gone from the pregnant woman to rescuing the president. So, yeah, the plot of this game is very strange, but I suppose it's exactly the same as the film. The general consensus is that the Yakuza are going to be using a Japanese government official to be hypnotized and then to kill the president. I think that is the basic consensus of the game. It isn't really conveyed very well through the game because you've got the mission titles and then you get a small clip of the film both before and after you finish each level. Anyway, but before we get into all that properly, let's have a look at the menu design first. So the main menu of the game has 4 different options: mission mode, arcade mode, options, and credits. It's got a still image that I presume is a movie still of Taxi 2 with the Eiffel Tower in the background. It has an overall blue theme. And, you know, it's alright, it plays it safe, but it's certainly not the most offensive thing in the world. So mission mode is the story mode of the game, and arcade mode basically sees you replaying the tracks you play in mission mode, but just as races against a rally driver. So let's begin with mission mode, because that's probably where you'll spend your time with this game. And notice how I just say time, not large amount of time, just time, because there isn't really that much to do. There are 9 missions in this game. 9 missions, each one, if you don't get p***ed around by the game, probably only take a few minutes each, so you can be finished with the story mode in this game in probably an hour. It's very similar to Taxi 3 in that sense. It had a few missions, some cutscenes in between, and then you were done quicker than you could probably watch the film. So the missions in this game essentially boil down to one of 2 things: race against the time, or race against another opponent whilst also racing against the time. So out of the 9 missions, 6 of them are time trials, but it's never actually clearly explained to you what you're actually supposed to do or where you're supposed to go. Now when you boot up the game, it does give the option of the game being in French or English, so I assumed that it would probably give some English subtitles in the French cutscenes. But it doesn't, and spoiler alert, my French hasn't really improved much since I learnt it in primary school when I was like 10 years old. So on the warm-up mission, it just spawns you in a car park, and it kind of just says go, but it only gives you like 6 seconds to reach the first checkpoint. It was giving me some major flashbacks to the opening of the original Driver, where you're just in that parking lot. But thankfully all you have to do is just leave the car park. It just wasn't very clearly explained, and that's just the general overview of the entire game. There's not a single mission that's properly explained as to why you're doing it, where you're going to, what the point is of any of it. And that's definitely where some of the frustration comes from for this game. It's not all of it, don't get me wrong, because there is some jank that we really need to get into later. But the lack of context and any kind of guidance, and I don't mean like an arrow or a driving line or something, just an explanation before the level starts as to what I'm supposed to do would be fucking lovely. And yeah, so the other 3 missions out of the 9, you're racing opponents, 2 of which are the Yakuza and 1 is a rally driver. And those are by far the worst 3 missions in the game, and I will explain why in just a little bit. So in terms of controls, they are fairly simple. You hold X to go, and then steer with the left analog stick. You can change your perspective with the triangle button, you can use the brake with the right bumper, and then square, which I originally thought was going to be the brake, is actually a boost button, and there doesn't really appear to be a brake button tied to any of the face buttons, just the handbrake on the bumpers. I could be wrong, but I spent ages trying to play around with that, and could not work that out. The boost, by the way, you don't start the game with. You'll notice on the top there's 2 bars. The top one is for health, and the one underneath is for boost. Now, the bar is there for your entire playthrough, but you don't actually have access to the boost until a few missions in. But the game doesn't actually explain that to you whatsoever. So it wasn't until I was actually watching someone else play through a level, because I got fucking stuck, did I notice that they were boosting, and suddenly I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Thanks for telling me that, Taxi 2, you devious little bastard. So the controls are okay, I guess, they're fine. In terms of perspectives, you've got a couple of third-person cameras, you've got the bumper camera, and then the first person from within the car itself. That's definitely the best way to play, even though I don't know if I'm wrong here, but you definitely look a little offset from the steering wheel, like you're in the center between 2 seats. I'm not sure if that was just standard at the time. I don't think it was, but it just seems a bit strange. But that's definitely the best way to play the game, even though you can't actually see what speed you're going, because the speedo is so low res you can't read the numbers. So the actual handling leaves a lot to be desired. The car will either go from 0 to 60 in like 1 second, or it feels like it's just got no pull in the lower gears and takes ages to speed up, and there doesn't really seem to be an in-between. And the same can be said with using the boost. If you are speeding up very slowly and then use the boost, it feels like it makes no difference. But if you use it when the car suddenly decides it wants to spring to life and accelerate, then it's like you're entering the fucking Speed Force. Turning is a nightmare, handbrake turning feels so unintuitive. Basically, the whole handling model feels like it was designed by someone who's either blind or has never driven a car. I mean, having personally never driven a Peugeot 406, I can't tell you what it's actually supposed to feel like, but I can probably guess it's not supposed to feel like that. Now, I mentioned earlier that the race missions in the story modes, those 3 missions, are the worst in the game. Now, there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, the design layouts for the actual courses themselves do not lend themselves to having more than 1 car on the road at any time. Secondly, the NPC drivers are beyond ridiculous. They're so incompetent, and it's not like they're super slow, they keep up. But they have one set driving line, so if you're ahead of them going slower, they'll just clip into the back of you, damage your car, and then the game could be over. Yeah, by the way, if you hit something too many times, it's game over. The car just explodes. So if you're going wheel to wheel side by side, the chances are with the really shoddy collision detection, you'll probably clip the opponent, and then they'll either stop, you'll stop, or the car will just explode. The mission titled The Japanese, when you first come across the Yakuza, I must have spent about 40 minutes just replaying that same 3-minute race because I just kept getting destroyed by the Yakuza car. And it definitely wasn't even on purpose. It's not like the game has been coded in a way whether the Yakuza is trying to take you down like it's Burnout. It's just really shoddy game design. Normally when I play these worst racing games, it's kind of like, haha, funny, the game's bad, and I kind of take it with a pinch of salt if something really stupid happens or, you know, game breaking. This, I genuinely had to walk away from for the rest of the day when this happened because I could not face sitting back down and playing it because it was pissing me off so much. Honestly, this whole game is just an absolute mess. So in terms of visuals, well, I'm sure you can probably guess where this is going. The environments are incredibly dull, they're super boxy, and it's not very visually distinct when you're driving through city streets, which makes it very hard to tell where you're supposed to go next. There's quite a lot of annoyingly noticeable pop-in, and a weirdly lacking amount of depth, so it is almost impossible to tell when the turn's coming up sometimes. Civilian cars look like rubbish, the Peugeot itself honestly doesn't look great either, and the other race cars that you're going against also look like crap. Basically, this game is incredibly ugly. Very, 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 very unattractive to look at. And the worst part is it's just not been very well optimized because we know the PS1 can handle better visuals than this game has, especially when it comes to racing games, and yet it consistently suffers with frame rate drops. Why? What purpose? What are you struggling with? There's nothing visually impressive on the screen at any time. Oh man, just fuck this game. I barely have anything to say about the sound design as well, because that's just as bad. The soundtrack is rubbish, it's just the same few electronic tracks repeated across 9 different stages, and then repeated again across the arcade mode. They're not very good, they're not memorable, it's just super generic stuff to fill in the background sound. The car sound effects are mid at best and terrible at worst. They sound like a car, I guess, so credit for that, but beyond that, I've got nothing to add. So in terms of critical response, it was very difficult to find any kind of reviews for this game, but I did find that one French video game firm gave the PlayStation version a 15 out of 100. That is very, very low, and you know what? Very, very deserved. It also has a few user ratings on the website Moby Games, which takes the game to a 2 out of 5 stars, which again, you know, seems pretty fair to me. And of course, due to the niche nature of this game, there's pretty much no sales figures that I could find either, so best that it stays that forgotten, to be honest. Anyway, so now the time has come to rank Taxi 2 on our worst racing games tier list. Now, I sat there for quite some time and thought, oh, this might actually be a good addition to the so bad that it's actually kind of good tier. But then I remembered the amount of desk smashing, blood pressure increasing rage that this game caused me to have in the span of a 2-hour playthrough. There is literally no other category for this game except pure evil. It is just terrible, guys. It is such a bad game. Just on a side note, I know there's been a few requests for a higher definition version of both the wheel that has all the suggestions on it, as well as the tier list. I'm really sorry I haven't got around to this yet. I have been super busy, but I am working on a way to get that to you guys, which will probably both be on the Discord server, which I have, and if you didn't know, I do have a website that I haven't updated in well over a year, so I'll get a page on there with a much higher definition version of the tier list and the wheel, so that it's accessible to literally everyone. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our look at Taxi 2 for the original PlayStation, and this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. I am kind of glad that that's the end of this saga, because I don't ever want to look at, touch, or play this game ever again. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Taxi 2. Have you seen the film? Do you like the film? And if you played the game, are you going to go and play it now you've watched me crash out about it? Share all your thoughts down below, and if you have any suggestions for the wheel, let me know as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.